Welcome to this fourth video in the Diaconate Offices series entitled Meet Your Neighbor. By taping a conversation with 4 different deacons from a variety of backgrounds, the hope has been to have us get to know each other a little bit better. Said otherwise, the hope is that we will see that aside from our common devotion to the Lord, His church, and her people, we share many other things as well. We share aspirations for our families and our parishes. And although we each come from a particular place, whether we think of ourselves as Hispanic, a very broad term, or African American, a broad term as well, or white or Anglo, or any of the other ways that we talk about ourselves, what we learned in our families of origin affect us today. But again, even in the midst of our diversity and our unique ancestries and stories, when friendships arise across boundaries, those boundaries become less of a wall and more of a gateway to discover how richly our Lord has blessed the human family. As I've said in the other introductions to these videos, we're making very modest claims about this project. The videos are not fixing anything beyond having us get to know each other better. There are no solutions to racial and ethnic divisions that you will find here. I have no policy prescriptions and no politics. And there is not even a suggested direction of reform. Rather, we are only at step 1 of a 4-step method of theological reflection. I explained that more fully in the first video, and you can check out that earlier video for an overview, a refresher of those 4 steps that move from discovery to action. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. But simply put, the first step is here, and that is to tell our stories to each other. When I discover how your experiences and mine are similar, or at least understandable, there is less that I need to fear about you. In a previous video, I brought forth words spoken by Dr. Martin Luther King about 60 years ago. At a college lecture in Iowa, Dr. King said, "I am convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other, and they don't communicate with each other because they are separated from each other. And God grant that something will happen to open the channels of communication." May we take one more step in not being separated from each other. Let us get to know one another, to know our neighbor. And the neighbor that you are to meet in this video is our neighbor Deacon Javier Pineda. As with the other video interviews, I've tried to edit out the pauses and fumbles so as to keep the conversation moving along for you. I ask you to listen to the reflections from Deacon Pineda, a man who chooses his words thoughtfully. And by the end of the video, you will come to know him better and hear him describe his journey into where he is today. It's a story that begins in Mexico, a land that he left at age 12, leaving Monterrey to come to Chicago. And part of his story includes his personal and genuine engagement in history in the United States civil rights movement. I ask you to listen as he relates some of his experiences in working with Cesar Chavez in the early 1970s. And at the end of the conversation, I will come back for a few final words. So please, let's watch. Well, good day to you, Deacon Javier Pineda. Deacon Javier is joining this conversation. Say hello to the people, Javier.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. All right. So this is one of the 4 conversations we're going to have as part of this video presentation. And I've asked Javier, and he's graciously agreed to submit to some intense questioning here. And we're going to ask him hard things like what his name is and where he was born and what his experience is as a man who speaks Spanish. And I phrase it in that awkward way because we're going to get into what do we call you if we want to generalize. So, Javier, you are a deacon in the Archdiocese of Chicago. How long has that been going on?
Since 83, 37 years.
And you went through the English program, or was the Spanish program?
The English program.
Okay. Okay. Now, where have you served, and what kind of ministry are you doing now?
Well, I was ordained at St. Agnes of Bohemia in Little Village. I was there 7 years. And then I went to St. Adrian in Marquette Park. I was there 13 years. From there, I went to St. Francis of Rome in Cicero. I was there 10 years. And my present parish is St. Torribius near Midway Airport. And I've been there 7 years.
Okay. All right. So, well, good. What kind of things do you do as a deacon? What kind of ministries have you been involved in or are involved in now?
The first thing that comes to my mind, besides the ordinary things of parish ministry, preaching, baptisms, baptismal preparations, stuff like that. I have been involved with the Pastoral Migratoria, which is the immigration issue. I have stepped away from that due to health reasons. And before that, a lot of community organizing efforts here in the Market Park area.
Now, you mentioned immigration. Are you an immigrant?
Yes, I am.
What's that? Where are you from? Where are you born?
I'm from Mexico. I was brought here by my parents in 1960 at the age of 12.
Okay. Where in Mexico?
Well, I was born in Durango, but I came from a city, Monterrey, which is about 2 hours away from the border. It's one of the most industrial cities in Mexico. I lived there my childhood years very happily.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up presumably speaking Spanish, living in Monterrey.
Yes, I did.
And what's your experience of making the transition from Spanish to English? Because you're quite an accomplished English speaker. Tell me about that process.
Well, it wasn't an easy one. Many people accuse immigrants of not wanting to learn the language, and I was one of them. There's a little reluctance to blend in. You miss the old country, and you always just dream of going back. But when I realized that that wasn't going to happen, and when I saw other immigrants coming and learning English a lot faster than me, I said, okay, I better start changing my way of thinking. So I made a stronger effort to learn the language. I came into the neighborhood of St. Francis of Assisi, which is near Halsted and Roosevelt Road, near Maxwell Street. Probably more people would. I went to a Catholic school right there at St. Francis, which closed soon after I graduated. And of course, this was in the pre-Vatican days. And I was with the Franciscan sisters who did a real good job. I was very focused on my studies.
All right, so you came over when you said 12 years old. So you would have been so you were in elementary school as what, like a sixth grader, seventh grader, something like that? Is that?
Well, I actually graduated from sixth grade in Mexico. But when I came here, because of the language, I was thrown back to fourth grade. So I was older, like 2 or 3 years older than the rest of my classmates.
Okay. All right. So then, so you had the experience at St. Francis. What about high school? What's the story there?
Well, because I was so involved in the church even at that age of 12, 13, I ended up going to the seminary, St. Jude Seminary in Momence, Illinois, with a Claretian missionary priest. Uh, and that was an experience too, because I was the only uh, Hispanic in my whole classroom, which was about 30. So you're talking about living year round with 30 people who are, it was my first experience into the culture of the American culture, I guess I
Really?
would say.
What was it?
Because
How about at the at St. Francis in the grade school? Were you the one and only kid from Mexico, or were there other kids?
no, actually there was a small Hispanic community in between Roosevelt and Maxwell. Um, So it was quite interesting. First of all, this was my first experience of uh, encountering different people, different language, different culture. So we were in between uh, the people of Italian descent on Taylor Street and mostly Black African American people on Maxwell. And my first experience of being in that situation was kind of a scary one, because there was a lot of friction between them. And
Mm.
we were caught in between people throwing rocks, and we didn't know what was going on. But eventually, you learn what's going on, the misunderstanding between people, the hatred and stuff. So that was my first lesson into multiracial racial situation there.
Now, how long were you at the minor seminary out in at
I
St.
was
Jude?
there 4 years,
Okay, so you graduated from St. Jude.
St. Jude Seminary, yes.
Okay, and you survived that immersion with these. So that was you were living out there.
Yes, I was. And it was a good experience. You mentioned that my English uh, being understandable. I learned a lot from that, because when I went there, I thought I knew English, but then when I started talking and everybody would start laughing, I realized all the mistakes that I was making,
Mm.
and that's when uh, that's my other part of the education became, kicked in. Uh, a, better education in the language,
Yeah.
reading, writing, and everything.
And leave it to our classmates to beat us up, to without mercy, to teach us something. Uh,
Yeah, right.
Now, what about at home? I presume that the family you spoke Spanish at home, and
Yes,
and
yes,
the Mexican. I don't want to reduce the Mexican culture to language, but also um, the the broader culture of the Mexican culture was something that happened at home. That was something that you all engaged in. So
yes. Even to this day, it's part of us. It's a beautiful part of us, and difficult to let it go. Some people do, well, not here.
oh, okay. And how about your? Now you are a father and grandfather.
Great grandfather.
I didn't realize. Okay.
I have four great grandchildren.
Wow. That's pretty good for a guy who's only 35. So what's your view of passing on your heritage to the next generations? You've got children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. What's your Mexicanish How does that play a role in the younger people's lives?
Wow, that's a tough one. I'm sure it does play a role. Um, it's not always visible to me,
Mm-hmm.
um, eh, but I know that it's part of their identity too. Um, my children, my grandchildren know me, know my history. Uh, Sometimes it's not a history that I like to, um, what's the word, uh, tell people about. But I'm quite I'm quite proud of it. I guess that's contradicting myself. Um, one of the things that happened, Richard, if I may explain a little better, when I left the seminary in back in '69. I became very involved with the United Farm Workers, uh, with the Cesar Chavez, with a great boycott. Uh, by that time, I had been uh, uh, I had gotten tired of schooling. Remember, I went six years of grammar school in Mexico, and then another 4 years of grammar school here in the United States, and another 4 years of high school. I did go to the university 1 year, and I really wanted to jump into the world and uh, and become involved in something. And this was one issue that I joined, the help being a volunteer for the United Farm Workers,
Mm-hmm.
which I to this day I thought that was the greatest education that I ever got. Um, One in public speaking, because at that age, well, you're talking about 2021. I was giving lectures in universities about the farm workers to students who came many times from of course from different spectrums. You have the people who were very much against the farm workers, and they felt that everybody had to pull up themselves from their bootstraps, as they say. Um, So that was one education that I got, and it was mixed in with my religious views, my social justice views, which had already been started at St. Francis.
Mm.
It's funny you talk about see, judge, and act just before as we started here, and I was already doing that at the age of 13, 14, because I belonged to a youth group, Young Christian Workers, which use that method,
Mm-hmm.
as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I became very involved. And well, I shared this with my kids. Going back to your question, I shared this with my kids, and I showed them pictures of Cesar Chavez and myself. Uh, and and well, God knows how it will impact them, but they know about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in a sense, don't we trust that who you and I are is sort of like it's in the water, it's in the air of what our children are breathing and drinking. And
Mhm.
you're right, you really don't know what that means or what my faith means to my children, my grandchildren. But at least we're not silent about who we are or what we believe, and it's offered. It's you're a joyful man. I try to be a joyful person, and maybe what we have to offer is sufficiently attractive that it may keep their minds open to exploring what you and I have discovered as the joy in working in the Lord's vineyards. We can hope and pray for that. Um, One of the questions I want to explore is, and let me just caveat, you are not here as Javier Pineda as the representative of all things Hispanic. We're talking to Javier, and your experience as a Hispanic person is not prescriptive of all Hispanic experiences. But I think it helps shed light on presumably reasonable person such as yourself, and how you've come to live in the country. And I guess one of the questions is your experience, who you are today, different from who I am because of the fact that you were born in Mexico, and I was born in Little Company of Mary in Roseland on the south side. What does the Hispanicness do to you today? How did it affect you growing up, say, differently from my experience or from, say, an African-American experience? Is there a way, it's such a broad and vague question, but is there a way that you can say that being Hispanic, being Mexican made a difference in a way different than being an Irish German? Or is that just a dumb question?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's dumb. It's a very good question. For me, for me, it's a love affair of my people. I came here to the city of Chicago. I still live in Chicago. I have always worked in the Hispanic community, and I have been blessed because my knowledge, my experience of my my heritage has always been connected to what I do and to what I believe in. But I say that I am blessed because for 60 years, I have lived in a multicultural situation, in the sense that, for example, during those years, during the seminary, we're talking about the 60s, right? From 65 to 70, those were very turbulent years, and I was right in the middle of it. In the middle of it, I enjoyed reading in books about the civil rights movement, and I admired it so much that that when I left the seminary, I wanted to be involved in some kind of civil rights movement. I ended up working with the farm workers, even though I'm not a farmer, but I identified with the cause. And if anybody knows about Cesar Chavez was a disciple of Martin Luther King, who had in those days was um, well, of course, we know that he died in that era too, but it left such an impression on me uh, that it has made a big difference in understanding what is going now. You know, uh, unfortunately, many people don't see it that way. They hear about riots and they start throwing out labels, and they shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that. They never try to they never try to understand why. Why is this happening? You know, um, and it's not easy. It's not easy to find the answer. But when you have lived in a situation um, such as we are living in, you start asking more questions, and you don't jump into conclusions. And to me, that's one of the blessings that I have received throughout the years.
You
That I
used the phrase "see, judge, act" before. and let me put words in your mouth, but what you're saying is we need to see before we presume to judge or to act. And part of the seeing is gathering the data from, say, from your life experience, and that gives you a window into current events. So it's more data than the person who just immediately jumps in with a stereotyped conclusion that this is good or this is bad, and is responding to nothing but their emotional predisposition or their bias or their bigotry. So okay, all right. So the Cesar Chavez that experience was foundational for who you are all these years later. And
Yes, because I developed my sense of community. I developed my sense of justice. Uh, uh, and I have a very difficult time at times because it has become part of me. You know, it's like I can walk down the street and if I see something wrong and I can correct it, I will. Uh, and some people call that being nosy, you know, and it's very hard to explain.
Yeah.
Yes, I am nosy.
Yeah.
And I think we're all supposed to be nosy. That if there's a small thing that we can correct, something as simple as picking up a piece of garbage from the street that somebody else just threw out the window, that's caring. And I think that's what we're called to do in very simple ways. You know, it's like we don't have to go into theological terms. It's just caring for your environment, caring for your neighborhood, caring for the people that that are around you, setting an example. You know, somehow sending a message. You know, uh, what you're doing is not right. You know, I'm not going to sermonize, but I'm going to show you the example of how nice a community can be if you just do your part. You know,
and that comes out of a moral imagination, that to be able to dream, to think of what the alternatives are to the bad situation. You're offering a way forward. The positive vision. You mentioned not only Cesar Chavez, but also Martin Luther King Jr., both of whom are immersed in the gospel. And what animated their struggles were things like the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes, and it was their faith that showed them the way to lead people. It wasn't politically animated in the first instance. Politics comes to bear to fix things, but their vision of what tomorrow might be and what a human person is and how they might be lifted up, those are gospel values. So that they're not just, it's not what Javier thinks. Ultimately, it's what Jesus thinks. And when we rest in that, it ain't you and me imposing our will on somebody else. It's us trying to come to terms with our Lord and sharing that wisdom. So I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that's what I gather from what you were telling me. So I don't know, is that fair or unfair?
it's clearer than
Okay.
what I said.
No.
But it's fair, yeah.
No. All right, I'm going to come to the close of this interrogation. And you've been a good sport. And before I do, I mentioned the phrase "a dumb question," but let me ask another one. Is there something that I should have asked that I didn't that would help people who are not Hispanic have a little bit more insight into at least your experience? And we're not going to extrapolate your experience as the experience that all Spanish-speaking people have. But is there something else that you would want to leave this conversation with that that we ought to know about you or about your experience as you find yourself today in the year 2020?
I think that we all know that following Christ has consequences. And sometimes one of the consequences not being understood. Not being understood. Why does he think that way? Or why? And that's hard. That it's hard when people don't understand you because they put you in a certain into a certain corner and say, okay, don't talk about certain things to this guy because you're going to get in trouble. From the very beginning, we do things according to our conscience, and that can later be misinterpreted. As it was in my case, 3 times I tried to become a citizen and I was denied until I had to hire a lawyer and to help me through the process. You know, this is something that I did and that I did when I was very young. I don't do it anymore. Maybe I should. But what I'm saying is that our Christian life will always have consequences. It's called the cross, you know, and the cross is a scandal for some, but it's a blessing for those of us who believe. So I very proudly hold my FBI record to my kids. Hopefully they'll take it the right way.
Now, my father was an FBI agent, so.
Don't you go telling him.
It's no, long ago. When I was a baby, he was back in the early 50s. He was an FBI agent. So you were committing crimes long after he left the FBI. So we're good. No, that's very good. So Javier, I want to thank you very much for sharing so much with us, and God bless you, and you are an inspiration.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks everybody. I have enjoyed sharing a little bit of my experience with my brothers, and hopefully it'll be a starting point of, like Richard says, having a conversation, a conversation that we seldom have because we don't make time. We don't take the effort. And I want to thank you, Richard, for taking the effort into starting this.
You'll see it on the big screen pretty soon. So we'll have a grand opening, and just like in Hollywood. So, all right. So I'm going to shut off the recording if I can figure out which button to do that.
Yeah, pull the cord out.
Yeah, that'll stop it. Okay. All right. God bless you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deacon Javier. I'm grateful that you were so open. I am moreover grateful that I was able to introduce you to our viewers. It was a blessing to hear further proof of the richness of experience in our community. And if I might, just a clarifying note, Deacon Javier made reference to his FBI file. Indeed, there is such a file. It is the case. And for those who don't remember or were not around during the Great Boycott, the work of the United Farm Workers and the witness of Cesar Chavez and his associates, well, there was suspicion about what Cesar and his colleagues were doing. Civil action and public protests were not always welcome, and Javier was in the thick of it. But thank you for watching, and certainly if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and communicate with me at the Diaconate office. May God bless you, and thank you for the work that you do.